In the US, we often brush off the idea of overpopulation. Obviously, because we're just so, happy, we're well fed, we have these luxuries. But when we look at other countries and we look at the world, we have to understand that this idea of overpopulation isn't something that is just confined to the world outside of the US. It affects us all. And because of that, in order to solve this problem of this overpopulation, to help these people, we have to vote in affirmation of this bill. And by doing so, we'll have two things will come off of that. One, we have to vote in affirmation because India needs proper contraception, and two, of the population or of the overpopulation problem, like I stated before. Now moving on to my first contention, talking about India needs proper contraception. So right now, India does have a form of birth control. Do not be misinformed. However, the problem with this birth control, in fact, is called sterilization. So while sterilization is, common knowledge to most countries around the world, it's even considered common practice sometimes. Well, we have to realize that it's not always the most effective and clean. Andrew Rosenthal on August 2nd, 2013, in fact, of the New York Times reports that in India, birth control is due to sterilization. In fact, 37% of all of sterilization in the world is located in India. And when it is in India, generally it is used in unsafe and unclean factories where women just line up and then go in for their sterilization efforts. Now, the impacts that derive off of this is that obviously there are sanitation risks. Now, this is important because when we're looking at this idea of the sterilization of this birth control, we see that it's going in the right direction. But the problem is, because of low sanitation, because of the conditions that surround us, there is going to be health risks to these people, to these women, in fact, that are trying to maintain these countries' laws. And only through the supervision of the United States can we help this contraception and these sterilization efforts be more safe. Now, the second problem is the actual problem of overpopulation. Let's quantify this problem. So, Jason Burke of The Guardian, November 13, 2014, states that in 2030, India will be the highest population, nearing about 1.5 billion people. And this is with the current factors. Now, there are three problems off of this. First of all, there's going to be low amounts of food, which would mean that this would lead to suffering of people. Two, there would be a problem with sanitation, which could lead to disease spreading throughout the world. And three, if there's a huge amount of people, first of all, this could lead to either riots or these people could be easily misinformed, disillusioned, and therefore create an unstoppable force, an army that would be too hard to handle for the world. Now, when we look at the problem right now of this overpopulation, the problem in India, we have to realize that this affects the world as a whole as one magnitude. Therefore, we can't leave it to only wait for it to quell down, and we have to take action now. Representative, why should we vote in affirmation of this bill, seeing that abortions in itself are very inhumane? So what we have to realize is that we're not talking about whether or not abortion is humane or not. What we're talking about is that there's a problem, and this problem is overpopulation. I've already quantified that in my second contention, talking about how the problems of overpopulation affect all of us, and we have to look for a solution now. But Representative, when we're talking about overpopulation, why should we use such an inhumane act to solve it? Why can't we just reform India? So, I get what you're trying to say, Representative, but what we have to realize is that this bill is doing what you're suggesting. We're reforming the current practices in India right now. There are problems in India with the sterilization efforts, and therefore only when we step in and make these efforts better can we actually reform India, like you suggest. Alright, Representative, moving on to another point, where will all this money come from? Well, obviously, the bill already suggests that we're going to take $1 million from the U.S. and give it to India in terms of aid. It states it in the resolution itself. Okay, but why can't we use this money to help the current problems in the United States? I mean, we see that there's problems with the employment numbers. Why can't we do something about that? So like I stated before, when we're talking about overpopulation, we can't be so conceited to only look at the problems of the United States. Overpopulation affects us as a whole. Like I stated before, disease could spread to other parts of the world. There could be food shortages throughout the whole world, and there could be a rising force of people, an army that could be unstoppable and daunting for the forces of the world. Therefore, it doesn't just affect India and the rest of the world, it affects us as the United States as well. Okay, then why can't we help China too? Doesn't China also have these problems? China already has solutions to the birth rates right there, and they already have solutions. So we have to look towards India, which are having problems with their birth control. Thank you. Once again, thanks Miss Kazi and thanks Mr. Nooner for looking at the affirmation speech. So this is the affirmation side of 202.